Hello, my lovely rose garden. I'm Avalon.
And I'm Ray.
And we are currently in a race against my stomach because it is fucked up for multiple reasons tonight.
Oh boy.
So let's see if we can get through chapter 6 before my inevitable death.
The IBS waits for no one, let alone Selena.
Yes. And this wonk-ass pacing. Okay, so last chapter, it's been a while since we recorded, but not a while since you heard these videos because you're hearing them once a week on Fridays, unless you're a patron, in which case you get several chapters well in advance. Just for example, we are recording chapter 6 today. Chapter 2 just went public. So patrons have had access to chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5 a week before chapter 2 even went up, several weeks before 3, 4, and 5, and this chapter 6 will be out to the public. So if you like these videos, please consider donating $2 a month to join our Patreon to support the work that we do and our original writings. And if you can't pledge...
Help us survive this capitalist hellscape.
God, yeah. And if you can't pledge, no worries. Even if you just follow us on Patreon, you will have access to the Rose Garden Discord server. You won't have access to the patron exclusive channels, but you can at least hang out with us and
get pictures of our cat.
Very important. With that, let's move on. Chapter 6. For the next 2 weeks, they traveled down through the continent, the nights becoming colder, the days shorter. Icy rain kept them company for 4 days, during which time Selena was so miserably cold that she contemplated throwing herself into a ravine, hopefully dragging Kaol with her. Everything was wet and half frozen, and while... Yes, things that are half frozen are wet.
Yeah. Because assumedly half frozen also means half melted.
Like, and this is going to stick out to me especially right now because I got back my editor, I got back my pro edit of Shifting Roots, so I've been going through that. And one of the things that my editor is really great at is, what do they call it in the grain industry? Cutting the chaff or whatever. Mm-hmm. Just basically getting all the unnecessary
separating
shit.
the chaff.
Yeah. She is really awesome at doing that and just making all of my sentences just so much punchier. Getting rid of filler words and repetitive descriptions and keeping the description that's stronger. Mm-hmm. So she would have a field day with these books is what I'm saying.
Send them to her and watch her lose her faith in humanity one sentence at a time.
No, I want her to keep working with me, so she's invaluable. I don't want to hurt her. Okay. Sorry, there's a little frog in my throat.
Get something to drink. Get a drinky.
Yeah, get a fun little drinky. There we go.
ASMR.
ASMR. And while she could bear sodden hair, she couldn't withstand the agony of wet shoes. Finally a relatable trait. She had little sensation in her toes. Each night she wrapped them in whatever spare dry clothing she could find. She felt as though she were in a state of partial decay, and with each gust of frigid, stinging wind she wondered when her skin would rip from her bones. Something, something Game of Thrones, something, something winter is coming.
I'm just over here like, okay, so... But she wasn't this miserable in the freaking slave encampment? I'm just like, why is this so much worse somehow?
Oh. But as it was autumn weather, the rain suddenly disappeared, and cloudless, brilliant skies once more stretched over them. Selena was half asleep on her horse when the crown prince pulled out of line and came trotting toward them, his dark hair bouncing. His red cape rose and fell in a crimson wave. Don't call it that.
Oh no!
I know that's not what she meant. It's very niche.
Your period ever come at the most inopportune time, like on horseback?
F in the chat. Above his unadorned white shirt was a fine
Oh no, he's wearing a white clothes too? Oh no!
Above his unadorned white shirt was a fine cobalt blue jerkin trimmed with gold. She would have snorted, but he did look rather good in his knee-high brown boots, and his leather belt did go nicely, even though the hunting knife seemed a bit too bejeweled. I know more about what this guy looks like than any... what are his principles, policies? How does he treat his men? She asked Kaol if they're close, but like...
I mean, I guess it makes... I guess it makes sense that she's notating how he looks and his clothes since she's before starting to have an interest in fashion. But also the interest in fashion seems to be used as an excuse to constantly describe characters' clothes, which is boring.
And it's not even, like, interesting. He's wearing a red cape, a white shirt with a blue jerkin, a belt, and boots. Like, that's not an especially flavorful description.
Yeah.
You have described the prince from Snow White. He pulled up alongside Kaol. "Come," he said to the captain, and jerked his head at the steep grassy hill that the company was starting to ascend. "Where?" the captain asked, jangling Selena's chain for Dorian to notice. Wherever he went, she went. "Come see the view," Dorian clarified. "Bring that one, I suppose." Selena bristled. That one, as if she were a piece of baggage.
Girl, you are.
You are an escort mission, honey. Like,
you are a prisoner that was in a slave camp. You are a thing to him. That's how it works.
But damn though, he's coming to get his boyfriend to show him the view. I guarantee, and the vibes between these two could be fucking rancid for all I know. I don't remember much about their relationship. But I guarantee that I will come out of this shipping Kaol and Dorian way more than shipping Selena with anybody. We'll see, though, if there's any other good characters that pop up for her. Kaol moved them out of line, giving her chain a fierce tug. She grasped the reins as they advanced into a gallop, the tangy smell of horsehair creeping into her nostrils. They rode quickly up the steep hill, the horse jerking and surging beneath her. Selena tried not to wince as she slid backward in the saddle. If she fell, she'd die of humiliation. But the setting sun emerged from the trees behind them, and her breath caught in her throat as a spire, then 3, then 6 more appeared, piercing the sky. Atop the hill, Selena stared at the crowning achievement of Aderlin, the glass castle of Rifthold. It was gargantuan, a vertical city of shimmering crystalline towers and bridges, chambers and turrets, domed ballrooms and long, endless hallways. It had been built above the original stone castle and cost a kingdom's wealth to construct. She thought of the first time she'd seen it 8 years ago, cold and still, frozen like the earth beneath her fat pony. Even then...
Okay, that is something that I am curious about. Like, what general time period this is supposed to be placed in. Because, of course, you know, the cover tells me nothing. She could be from the 80s, for all I know. Like, the 1980s, with that outfit. But, I was actually watching a video. This is going to be a tangent. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Go off, King.
I was watching a video on a certain delusion that kind of spread around Europe for a while, like a sort of I wouldn't say a mass hysteria, because it tended to only affect rich people. You'll understand why. But basically, it was the delusion of their body or body parts being made of glass and them worrying about them breaking. And it actually started around the time that glass was being introduced to Europe from the Middle East. And it only affected rich people because rich people were the only ones that were able to afford and access glass.
Interesting.
So I'm thinking to this because, like, you think that glass has kind of been around for longer than it has in Europe. But it was actually very rare to have glass windows until well into, like, the early 1800s, I think.
So we would place this as pre-1800s for sure.
Okay.
It's a whole castle made of glass, and it's very expensive.
But imagine having even that much glass in Europe. Like, there's a reason that churches having stained glass was so impressive during, the Gothic periods and whatnot, like the Baroque periods and everything like that. So even wealthy people would have access to a very small amount of glass. So I'm just over here like, so what time period is this set in? And
I'm going to answer you right now on that.
None. No time period. It is
none time with left aesthetic.
Yeah. But yeah, just my brain being all like, but how much glass?
Just latches on to tiny, minute detail. I watched a YouTube essay on that.
And it was a really interesting essay too, because it talked about, it's all like, glass was kind of terrifying when people first got exposed to it, especially because the delusion came about because of how glass breaks. And, like, the fact that it can splinter into invisible pieces that will still draw blood, like, cleaning up glass is terrifying just nowadays. God, but, like, back when it first came out, it was such a, like, you don't see anything, but it's still making you bleed.
This is really putting into perspective parts of the Snow Queen.
Yeah. Yeah,
like with this cultural context in mind, I'm like, oh, that's kind of really interesting.
That is definitely, like, it's around that time period too. Around the time period the Snow Queen was written is when glass was starting to reach the general populace, and then they got that fear of broken glass.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's interesting. More trivia. Enjoy this trivia.
You find the most interesting documentaries.
Yeah. And it's all thanks to my horribly broken YouTube algorithm, which just leads me into the strangest corners of the web.
Still, though, I hope someone in our viewing audience goes and finds that, because that sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah, just look it up, like the glass delusion or something like that. You could probably be able to find it.
All right, time to get back to this shit.
Yeah, sorry. I went on a much more interesting tangent than whatever the hell is going on in this book.
She thought of the first time she'd seen it 8 years ago, so when she was 10. Cold and still, frozen like the earth beneath her fat pony. Even then, she found the castle tasteless, a waste of resources and talent, its towers reaching into the sky like clawed fingers. Oh, she's above it all, I see. She's so much better than these people. Their extravagance, her refinement, it's like that one meme.
It's like, what?
She remembered the powder blue cloak that she kept touching, the weight of her fresh curls, the scratch of her stockings against the saddle, how she'd worried about the spot of mud on her red velvet shoes, and how she kept on thinking about that man, the man she'd killed 3 days earlier. So, yeah, literally it's just their extravagance, my refinement. Their bad taste, my culture.
You had killed someone at 10 years old?
Okay.
Hey,
how about we get more information on that? Oh, nope.
I'm just over here like, so I have a day job. I work around a bunch of 10-year-olds. I don't think any of them have the thought or foresight to be able to commit murder. They get distracted by jingle keys.
Yeah, all you gotta do is say Skibbity, Ohio, and they're fucking off.
And they're just on the ground wheezing. I T-posed at a kid and he collapsed to the ground.
You're exerting too much of your power.
Like, it's... I can't, like, maybe when I was 10 years old, I could be all like, oh yeah, 10-year-old assassin, that would be a thing that could exist. But now, looking back, I'm all like, no.
10-year-olds are so goofy, dude.
Yeah.
I taught a bunch of them last year. I'm not in the same grade level that I was last year teaching, but they're so goofy.
Yeah.
They don't... Like, I'm sure that to them, their thoughts are very deep and serious because it's the first time that they're experiencing these thoughts, but to the adults in the room...
It's like, oh,
even
sweet summer child.
Even just the slightly older kids in, like, the next grade, they're just like, wow, you're a disaster. Keep being you. Keep being you, 10-year-olds.
It's
great.
It's okay to be cringe as a child and also cringe as an adult.
Yep.
Be cringe and free.
Be cringe, be free.
Try and not take things too seriously in life.
And if you fuck around in my class, I will look at you point blank and say that you are acting like the mayor of Skibbity, Ohio. And all of your classmates will point and laugh. So don't fuck around. This is just a reminder, by the way, that we do have day jobs. I am an elementary school teacher. Because someone left a very kind and wonderful comment on one of my videos recently, and they were like, oh, I've learned more about, like, literary analysis from you than I have from the education system. And I was just like, I am the education system. That's me. That's me doing novel studies with 7-year-olds and trying to get them to understand deep themes and nuance.
Listen, I understand the American frustration with the education system.
It is terrible.
Most of it is due to the fact that teachers are forced into the boxes of curriculum so hard and are not really allowed to deviate all that much unless they take extra time out of their life to find a way.
With no additional compensation.
With no additional compensation. And teachers are already so tired, so, give the teachers a break.
Yeah, it's, I detour into personal life stuff. I had a student today, a lot happened today, but basically we ended up having indoor recess, and this student came up to me and was like, I have a question. It was an older student. It was one of these 10-year-olds. These very silly, goofy 10-year-olds.
Very goofy 10-year-olds, yeah.
They are the goose game.
Yeah.
They truly are. But this student came up to me and was like, how come you teachers put like 100 of us into a room and then tell us to be quiet? And I'm like, listen, hun, we know it's unrealistic. But if we don't say it, then you're just gonna scream louder. Mm-hmm. We have to try, at the very least, to keep a somewhat reasonable level of volume in this admittedly very echoey room that you have to stay in, because we don't have anywhere else for you to go. Like, if we did have separate... And then they were like, oh, well, why don't we just stay in the classrooms? And I'm like, because the teachers also need a break. And we legally cannot leave you unattended. There is not enough staff for you to stay in the classrooms.
You see, children, the problem is understaffing.
I completely agree. It would be better if you just stayed in your classrooms, because you being in a multi-purpose room with 99 other kids who are all overstimulated and just in a feedback loop of overstimulating each other is a fucking nightmare. Especially if you happen to be on the spectrum or any other degree of neurodivergence, which I am, so I get it. But we don't have the staff. It really comes down to resources. We know that the system is broken. I don't think there is anyone in this country more aware of how broken our system is than the teachers.
Yeah.
And we are crying out for changes. But every single time we do, we get met with that pushback of, there's no budget, there's no staffing, who's going to make this happen, we're all overworked as it is.
Super off topic now.
This is where we are, okay? Real problems, okay? Real shit.
Real
Selena.
shit, not Selena being all like, oh, it's so gaudy. Glass castle. It's like, shut up, Selena. The American education system is crumbling.
The American education system is the real glass castle. Take that as a metaphor any way you want.
Except instead of looking at it, anyone who, and being all like, oh, the decadence, anyone who looks at the American education system is, oh, it's a pile of shit.
It's literally a dumpster that's been duct taped together and there's some rats fighting in the corner. Like, we're struggling over here, okay? We're doing our damn best. We know it's a dumpster fire, okay? We're just trying to make it through, same as the rest of you. I need to clear my throat now, pardon me. Okay, back from that momentary attempt to silence myself. Anyway, let's go back to the book.
Yay!
I promise I love my job so much.
You love your job, you just hate the government.
I love when I get to do my job.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something?
Which, sadly, I don't, as much as you would think.
Being able to do your job in the education system. Amazing. What a amazing revolutionary thought.
Would love to do that someday.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. One more tower and the whole thing will collapse, the Crown Prince said from his spot on the other side of Kaol. Oh, he also thinks it's gaudy. He is the love interest. Kaol is safe. Thank God. The sounds of their approaching party filled the air. We've still got a few miles left, and I'd rather navigate these foothills in the daylight. We'll camp here tonight. I wonder what your father will think of her, Kaol said. Oh, he'll be fine until she opens her mouth. Then the bellowing and the blustering will begin, and I'll regret wasting the past 2 months tracking her down. But, well, I think my father has more important matters to worry over. With that, the prince moved off. Selena couldn't keep her eyes from the castle. That sounds very...
It's so gaudy. Stares intently at it. This is like... She's tsundere for this castle.
This sentence... Selena couldn't keep her eyes from the castle. Couldn't keep her eyes away from the castle, maybe? Couldn't tear her eyes from the castle? Come on. Basic shit. Who edited this? She felt so small, even from far away. She'd forgotten how dwarfing the building was. Is that a slur in this universe?
I don't know.
Are there dwarfs? How would they feel about that? The soldiers scurried about, lighting fires and raising tents. You look as if you're facing the gallows, not your freedom, the captain said beside her. She wound and unwound a strap of leather rein around a finger. It's odd to see it. The city? The city, the castle, the slums, the river. The shadow of the castle grew across the city like a hulking beast. I still don't entirely know how it happened. How you were captured? She nodded. Despite your visions of a perfect world under an empire, your rulers and politicians are quick to destroy each other. So are assassins, I suppose. You believe one of your kind betrayed you? Everyone knew I received the best hires and could demand any payment. She scanned the twisting... Who the fuck were your clients? I want to know anything about your history as an assassin. I have nothing. I'm starving. Feed me a crumb.
Also, I'm just like, okay, assuming that another assassin turned her in, wouldn't that also jeopardize that assassin's safety and livelihood? Like, I'm just like, okay, so this feels very antithetical to moving up the ranks and being an assassin.
Yeah, she's mentioned that there's a king of assassins, so one would assume that there is some sort of guild in place here, in which I would assume that turning in one of your own, one who is apparently favored by the leader of the assassins, would really fuck your career, if not your entire life.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem like a smart way to get ahead, but wait, what do I know? I'm just someone who's played D&D more than once in my life. Were I gone, a vacancy would arise from which they could profit. It might have been one, it might have been many. You shouldn't expect to find honor amongst such company. I didn't say I did. I never trusted most of them, and I knew they hated me. She had her suspicions, of course, and the one that seemed most...
Sorry.
It kills the man. The one that seemed most likely was a truth she wasn't yet ready to face. Not now, not ever. Thanks for that. Enderveer must have been terrible, Kaol said. Nothing malicious or mocking lay beneath his words. Did she dare call it sympathy? Why? Why is he suddenly showing her any leniency? There is no reason for him to suddenly be talking to her like this.
Because...
You know, maybe if we had seen the 2 weeks of them traveling and just getting to know each other over just being around each other, but no.
We're gonna maybe see it in flashback sometime later. Because that's just how this book goes. Is
anything that is important will be shown in flashback.
Literally the beginning of this book, beginning of this chapter where they were talking about the 2 weeks of like freezing to death and all this shit is way more interesting than them standing here looking at this castle and talking to each other about the past.
Literally everything that is interesting is shown in flashback, and then we get the scenes of them just sitting around a campfire chatting. Most of what we have seen in this book is just them sitting around a campfire and chatting.
You know, okay, as a Succession fan...
Get sucked, idiot.
There's a lot of jokes about it being a show about people standing around in rooms talking at each other. Except... in Succession, the characters are so messy and ridiculous and stupid that, like, it works. Whereas this is basically the fantasy equivalent of them standing in a boardroom talking at each other.
Yeah, see...
And this is, like, amazing, huge fandom, billion out of 10. No one's throwing this is just standing around talking at each other, gripe with this.
No, until we came along.
No.
I'm sure there's been others before us. But...
Yeah, but still, I'm just like, this should be a well-known gripe at this point. Because so far, this book has literally just been them every chapter is, they're at a location, and they talk at each other.
Yep.
And sometimes reference something that happened previous to the chapter starting. And I'm like, oh my god.
And that's going to keep happening for the next page and a half or so. Yes, she said slowly, it was. He gave her a look that asked for more. Well, what did she care if she told him? Why? Why does he suddenly care? I don't know why. When I arrived...
Because the author says so!
Yeah, pretty much. When I arrived, they cut my hair, gave me rags, and put a pickaxe in my hand, as if I knew what to do with it.
So they did cut her hair. Why'd they let her grow it long?
Yeah, what the fuck? It's only been a year. How is your hair this long again? I don't know. Maybe it's magic.
Maybe her hair just grows fast, but still, like, when they first got her, if they cut her hair off, why'd they let her grow it out? Wouldn't they, like, shear her down every other month?
Aesthetic.
We both briefly have simultaneous strokes. You stroking out? Am I stroking out?
Anytime that you're... At this point, because we need to get through this. Anytime we start questioning the logic of why things are happening, I'm just going to start making that noise. That's my brain melting.
Brain cells actively killing themselves.
They chained me to the others, and I endured my whippings with the rest of them. But the overseers had been instructed to treat me with extra care.
Why didn't we see this?
And took the liberty of rubbing salt into my wounds. Salt I mined, and whipped me often enough.
Wait, so they used the salt they mined just to torture them? Aren't you selling that? Salt is, like, a valuable resource. You can sell that shit for a lot of money.
and whipped me often enough so that some of the gashes never really closed. It was through the kindness of a few prisoners from Aelwe that my wounds didn't become infected. Every night one of them stayed up the hours it took to clean my back. Kael didn't reply and only glanced at her before dismounting. Had she been a fool to tell him something so personal? He didn't speak to her again that day except to bark commands. Yeah, so where was this, like, anywhere before when you were talking about, like, the prisoners and shit? Because you didn't give a fuck about them a couple chapters ago.
Yeah, and now we have reason to assume that there were people that were, like, taking care of her out of the goodness of their heart because, like, they were assumedly also being, you know, whipped and tortured and everything, but she got taken care of. And it's like, okay.
Selena awoke with a gasp, a hand on her throat.
Awoke?
Shut up.
I'm sorry, I need to get my happiness somewhere. It's not going to be founded in this book.
Cold sweat sliding down her back and pooling in the hollow between her mouth and chin.
Right here? Like right under the lip?
The fuck anatomy is this?
Just
cold sweat sliding down her back and pooling in the hollow between her mouth.
It took a while to get there. She was hanging upside down and also like kind of sideways.
She's in like the J caterpillar shape, waiting to emerge from her cocoon or her chrysalis into a more interesting protagonist.
Wouldn't that be something?
She'd had the nightmare before that she was lying in one of those mass graves in Endovir. We don't get to see the nightmare, though. And when she tried to pull herself from the tangle of rotting limbs, she'd been dragged down into a pile 20 bodies deep, and then no one noticed that she was still screaming when they buried her alive. Nauseated, Selena wrapped her arms around her knees. She breathed in and out, and tilted her head, her sharp kneecaps brushing against her cheekbone. Due to the unseasonably warm weather... So, you know, like, okay, fine. Autumn weather, unpredictable, fine, whatever. What was the point of having it be freezing cold before that?
I don't know, man.
We don't get to even see it, so why bother? They'd foregone sleeping in tents. Yeah?
Just...
Which gave her an unparalleled view of the capital. The illuminated castle rose from the sleeping city like a mound of ice and steam. Okay. There was something greenish about it, and it seemed to pulse. Okay. By this time tomorrow, she'd be...
see the wizard. The wizard.
God, I wish. By this time tomorrow, she'd be confined within those walls. But tonight it was so quiet, like the calm before a storm. She imagined that the whole world was asleep, enchanted by the sea-green light of the castle. Time came and went, mountains rising and falling.
She's like super tsundere for this castle.
She really is.
She's like, oh, I hate this castle so much. It's so enchanting, though. I can't take my eyes away from it. If only this green light didn't give me seizures. That's a little Kate Beaton reference for you. Hardy, har, har, har.
You ever the Great Gatsby so hard you died?
All the time. Every day of my life in high school.
Time came and went, mountains rising and falling, vines creeping over the slumbering city, concealing it with layers of thorns and leaves. She was the only one awake. Cool disassociative daydream. Anyway, she pulled her cloak around her. She would win. She'd win and serve the king, and then vanish into nothing, and think no more of castles or kings or assassins. She didn't wish to reign over this city again. Magic was dead, the Fae were banished or executed, and she would never again have anything to do with the rise and fall of kingdoms. She wasn't fated for anything. Not anymore.
Yeah, sure, whatever. Main character.
Just very vague, dramatic shit that's just kind of annoying because it's like...
Not gonna lie, I kind of want a main character to be all like, to not have a fate, and then like at the end of the story, like... They're presented with this grand quest, and they're like, actually, no, I wanna go home and eat some soup. Goes off to live in the woods, away from all the bullshit.
See, we have a genre for that now. It's called cozy fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Like Falling Stars fits into that category.
Yeah.
Because it's just, there's no high-stakes quest. It's just, your little fantasy character living their little fantasy
Even
life.
at the end, Anne was just all like, I just want to go home, actually, and eat cookies. I don't really want to deal with, like...
Pretty much.
All this BS.
She had what basically amounts to a hot fairy butler, like, giving her cookies all the time. Fuck yeah. Anyway, not to spoil my own books, but read like Falling Stars.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have another little time skip, little Tildy.
Woohoo, Tildy.
A hand upon his sword, Dorian Havillard watched the assassin from his spot on the other side of the sleeping company. There was something sad about her, sitting so still with her legs against her chest, the moonlight coloring her hair silver. No bold, swaggering expressions strutted across her face as the glow of the castle rippled in her eyes. He found her beautiful, if a bit strange and sour. It was something in the way that her eyes sparked when she looked at something lovely in the landscape. He couldn't understand it. Really? You can't understand why someone who was trapped in a salt mine for a year would have a spark in their eye when they see something pretty outside of that place? Can't fathom that? You're not very smart, are you? She stared at the castle unflinchingly. No, it's not unflinching. She literally can't keep her eyes from the castle.
That green light keeps giving her seizures.
Her form silhouetted against the blazing brightness that sat on the edge of the Avery River. Clouds gathered above them, and she raised her head. Through a clearing in the swirling mass, a cluster of stars could be seen. He couldn't help thinking that they gazed down at her. No.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah, okay, fine, whatever. No, he had to remember she was an assassin with the blessing of a pretty face and sharp wits. She washed her hands with blood, and was just as likely to slit his throat as offer him a kind word. And she was his champion. She was here to fight for him, and for her freedom, and nothing more. He lay down, his hand still upon his sword, and fell asleep. Still, the image haunted his dreams throughout the night, a lovely girl gazing at the stars, and the stars who gazed back. None of this has been earned.
Yeah.
Literally, this is the chapter where they just decided that Kaol and Dorian are going to be in a love triangle with Selena, because suddenly Kaol is asking her questions, even though literally last chapter he did not give a shit.
Yeah.
This is the love triangle.
Really wish we could have seen those 2 weeks that they were just traveling around and justify this sudden interest in her.
Because you can't tell me that anything that happened in this chapter is more relevant than anything that happened in those 2 weeks, aside from the castle is now in view.
And it's green!
And it has a strange green
We're off
light.
to see the wizard.
We're looking at fucking East Egg over here, like... There's some more fucking Great Gatsby references to remind you that we are well-read, literate people when we're not reading Sarah J. Maas. Anywho, that's the end of chapter 6. Nothing of worth was accomplished aside from setting up the love triangle.
And nothing happened.
And I wouldn't even say that was anything worth noting, because it feels out of nowhere that they're reacting to her this way. Nothing has changed about her behavior. We don't know thing fucking one about either of them. I'm not invested at all.
Yep.
And that's where we're gonna leave this. See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching, and a special thank you to my patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or in the description below, please consider joining my Patreon. Your support means so much to me and allows me to continue making content. If you want to support my content in different ways, consider buying my books, donating on Ko-fi, subscribing to the channel, or even just giving this video a like and comment. Any and everything is appreciated so much. Keep growing till next time, Rose Garden!